Welcome back to this Building Blocks for IoT. That's Jeremy Foster and I'm Christopher Harrison. We left off that last module going in, talking a little bit about IoT, describing what it's all about. And now, of course, you're probably wondering, well, where do I get started? And exactly what makes, at least in Microsoft world, an IoT device tick? What makes it sing? How can I actually do something with it? How can I send code to it?
Yeah.
That's what I want.
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I've got about a $500,000 worth of answer to that. So
okay, fantastic.
We'll do what we can. There's a really wide variety of IoT devices out there, and they come in all shapes and sizes. They're being announced all the time. There was a big announcement this morning about the Raspberry Pi 3. There was an announcement just the other day about a device. I forgot the name of it, a strange name. There's just devices coming out all the time, and some of them are like really big chips, and some of them are like really small computers, you know? I mean, some of them are really weak, and some of them are really powerful. There's really two kinds of devices, though. There's the kind that's a microcontroller, and then there's the kind that's what we call a system on a chip. It's a full computer with memory and what you would think of as a traditional computer because it's able to run a classic operating system. So there's a wide variety of devices, but what we're going to be talking about right now is Windows 10 IoT Core, which is the operating system that Microsoft made that runs on IoT devices, at least a subclass of IoT devices on some of the devices. So this is an operating system, and the important thing here is that this is the same operating system, Christopher, that's running on your phone. And the same operating system that's running on your PC and your tablet and your Xbox and all of these things. Not the same operating system that's running on your band, however. Thanks for pointing that out, though. It's interesting, too, because depending on your screen resolution, I tried to make this actual size, but it's running on a chip that's about this big. And it's running on this microscopic chip. Do you ever lose these? Like, if I have an extra micro SD card, I have to, like, tape it to something so I don't lose it. You can't even hold on to it.
I have those scattered throughout the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. It's 64 gigabytes worth of data on
that little space.
It's smaller than my pinky nail. Mm-hmm. It's phenomenal. So we're talking about an operating system that is boiled down to this itty-bitty device. And in fact, what you're looking at here is an 8 gigabyte SD card. And the last time I checked, this was like $6 in US dollars.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. So I went looking for the 2 gig model. I haven't looked up a 2 gig model because there's no point in buying it. As you can tell, it actually costs more money to buy a 2 gigabyte SD card than it does to buy an 8 gigabyte. But the Windows 10 IoT Core does not require any more than that 2 gigabyte micro SD card. So we're talking about an operating system that's been really trimmed down that will easily fit on this 2 gigabyte card. Now, I recommend that you buy something bigger than 2 because you kind of may as well. Save yourself some money and get some more space. You can even bump up to something like the 64 gig and you're still only spending something like $20. Mm-hmm. And I remember, well, of course, we all remember when these didn't exist, let alone when they existed and were rather expensive. But now the price has been driven down, and now we're putting operating systems on these absolutely microscopic things.
Still remember the old days of going out and spending hundreds of dollars on a 64 gig hard drive, let alone a micro SD card.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember spending money on a 10 megabyte hard drive decades ago. It was a lot of money too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Going out and getting like a zip disk if you needed portable storage for all that.
That's right. Yeah. We were still measuring them in floppy disks. This is like 74 floppy disks or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And now.
Yep. Now it's a whole new world.
Stack of floppies up to here.
Yeah, so let's look at the minimum requirements for Windows 10 IoT Core. This is what you need for your device/storage to run Windows 10 IoT Core. Now, it divvies up the memory requirements by headless and headed. Now, the headless means that you don't need a screen of any kind. Mm-hmm. This might be installed in a plant, and it's going to be reading some temperature and humidity, and it's going to be controlling a solenoid or a servo or something like that, okay? There's no screen required in that solution, and so you use a headless configuration. That's a simple registry setting. Just bam, turn on the headed, turn off the headed, whatever. And if you're running headless, you only need 256 megs of RAM, and only half of that needs to be free up for the operating system. If you're running headed, you need to do some graphics, you need to have a screen, then you run, you have a minimum of 512 megs of RAM, with half of that, again, freed up for the operating system.
Okay.
Now for storage, like we were just talking, you need an SD card that's at least 2 gigabytes in size. Definitely go larger than that, but that's what you're going to need at a minimum. And then you're going to need a processor that is at least 400 megahertz. The boards that Windows 10 IoT Core is supported on are all faster than that, so you're fine. And they also support PAE, NX, and SSE too, and so you should be good there.
That really doesn't sound like a whole lot in the way of requirements.
No, it's not. It's not. It's pretty good.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go back in time a little bit before Windows 10 IoT Core and talk about the legacy, talk about the convergence path from our other embedded operating systems, because Microsoft has a really rich history in embedded operating systems. I won't walk through every step here, but everybody remembers Windows Embedded at version 7 and 8 and 8.1, and this has been a convergence for a long time, where the different versions of the embedded operating system have been coming together, CE and embedded in the different SKUs like standard, industry, and handheld, coming together to quite a bit of convergence at 8.1, and finally coming together at Windows 10 all together with Windows for Devices and the Windows Embedded Compact and the Windows Embedded the other SKUs. And then the nice thing is that at Windows 10, not only did the embedded versions come together, but Windows for Embedded Devices, now called Windows 10 IoT Core, is converged with the other platforms. So we've got Xbox One, and we've got phones, and we've got desktops, and we've got the Windows on devices that are all coming together for a unified platform, where when you install this on a device, whether that device is a Raspberry Pi or a HoloLens or a desktop PC, it's getting the same core of that operating system.
Right. So you're writing for the platform, not necessarily the device itself that it's going to be running on.
Yep, that's right. And there's a really easy and rich way to ask the question of which device am I running on, or what's the environment that I'm running in? Do I have these certain features or capabilities available to me? And then you can logic switch based on where you're at. And then you're writing one app that's able to say, hey, if I am a phone, and have a camera, I'm going to do something here. But if I'm running on a Raspberry Pi and I don't have a camera, then I'm going to do something completely different.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's the convergence story. Now, Windows 10 IoT Core is not the only operating system that you could put on a device. I've played a lot with different distributions of Linux and installing Linux on different devices, and it's great for various scenarios. So why would I choose Windows 10 IoT Core on a given device and in a particular scenario? And let's cover a little bit of that.
Why would we choose Windows 10 IoT Core?
Yeah, and there are a number of distinguishing features.
Okay.
One of them is this whole concept of universal apps, being able to target not only that platform, but others at the same time. It's a huge advantage, it really is. We're looking at an ecosystem like this. And this is pretty phenomenal when you look at this broad of a family of device types. These are not just devices, these are device types. We have everything from phones to phablets, all the way up to convertible laptops, PCs, gigantic screens, some that have touch and some that don't. And then now in this family of device types, we have this little IoT core, this little IoT device rather, that's sitting down there in the corner. And Christopher, can you tell me what's different about that device from all the others?
There's no screen.
That's right. Every single one of those other devices on the slide has a screen of some kind, and that one doesn't have any at all.
Right.
So it's pretty differentiated. Same operating system. Same operating system and same core means same code. Same package that I develop is going to be able to land on all of these and then take advantage of their unique differentiating features.
So write once, run on many, 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 many devices.
Yeah, device types, yep. Yeah, and across this array of device types, there's also more choices. It's not just like, you come in and you develop an app a certain way and it'll run on any of those device types that's running Windows 10. But as you're writing this app, you've got some other really good choices that you can make, such as I'm a developer who chooses to write using the web stack and using JavaScript for most of the code that I write. It's just my preference. It's just like maybe it's my skill set, maybe it's my preference, whatever. And you can write JavaScript and write these universal apps. You can also write C++, and you can take advantage of all the unique characteristics of a C++ app, or C# or Python or Node or whatever. You can also choose different UI frameworks so that if you're versed in XAML, you can use XAML. If you're versed in HTML, use HTML. There's lots of options there. A lot of APIs. You can hit the core of the operating system, like I mentioned, just directly from any of those languages and any of those devices. You can also hit something that you pull in as a dependency, like .NET, or as we'll look at here in just a second, we've got support for the Arduino wiring API, so you can hit that API directly with your code. So a lot of really good options here for writing your code. It's really exciting as a developer to have this many choices. That's a great thing. One of the other very significant features of Windows 10 IoT Core on devices, a very differentiating feature and a very strong feature, especially for those enterprise scenarios, is the hardware level security. Microsoft has a really rich history of baking hardware level security into the operating system, where the operating system knows that this device is definitely this device. By integrating with the hardware level security that's built into the device. And that's extremely important, because if you have a device that says, I am device 1, and then all of a sudden there's a device halfway around the world that says, I am device 1, how do you really know? You don't have a user authenticating in this device in your application that you wrote. How do you know this is that device? And this might be a device that's purporting to be in your factory, on your floor, and it's reporting data that you're using for making business decisions, right? So this is critical.
Right.
And we can assure, using things like Secure Boot, that this is, in fact, your device. We can also bring in these modern, nice workflows like Windows Hello and Microsoft Passport for user authentication on these devices. So really good security in the operating system, even though we're working on little tiny devices. Like I mentioned, implicit Arduino Sketch API support. So this is great. This means that if you've already got some programs that are written for an Arduino using wiring code, I'm not the hugest fan of wiring code. I would way rather write something higher level and more fun and more elegant. But
so I'm just keeping score over here. So no wiring code, no data abstraction layers. Okay.
I have my preferences. I am, after all, a developer, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But if you've already written a program for your Arduino, and for some reason you want to replace that Arduino with a Dragon board or something with more beef, you know, then you can just directly address that wiring API. And it's just going to work. So that's great. Multi-device support. This isn't an operating system. You hear people talk a lot about the Raspberry Pis, the Raspberry Pi 2 that supports Windows 10 IoT Core, probably because it's a good all-around device. It's a great all-around device, and the price point's wonderful. You know, like most people can't argue with a $35 computer that they can buy and integrate into their latest project. That's pretty great. But we're talking about some decent device support, and obviously a lot of plans down the road. I should expand this slide now after this morning's announcement that Raspberry Pi 3 is...
I just saw that.
Absolutely. So that's really, really exciting. So these boards have their own characteristics. You know, some are more powerful, some are less. Just, you know, use what you need. That's the way it works. By the way, if you want a slide that goes into much greater detail on all of the boards, go to aka.ms/IoT boards. Made that short link for you, so just to make your life easier.
IoT boards.
IoT boards, aka.ms/IoT boards. Windows 10 IoT Core, as an advantage over other operating systems that you might choose to put on your device, has an enjoyable bootstrap experience. By bootstrap experience, I mean I just installed my operating system, just pulled this thing out of the box and got it set up. I'm ready to go. It can be an arduous experience. I've spent time on video and on blogs trying to explain how to get everything in Linux configured for my scenario. I want my app to run as soon as I turn the thing on. I want it to use this user. I want, you know, this access to my pins and whatever. And sometimes that's really hard. And the bootstrapping experience with Windows 10 IoT Core is very nice. I can now go to a student group and I can say, okay, everybody turn on your Raspberry Pi, plug in the power, and then they get a screen that looks like this. And this is great. This says, there's the device that you're dealing with. I recognize it. Here's your device name. I see that you're attached by way of Ethernet right now, or maybe it says Wi-Fi if you're attached by way of Wi-Fi, and just below that, the IP address. I get to see the IP address right out of the box, prominent on that screen. Now, if this were a live Windows 10 IoT core screen, I could touch this gear and I could go into a number of settings. And that's if I'm on the device. Now, if I'm on the device, that means I'm plugged in with HDMI, and I may or may not have the facilities to plug in a screen to this device, so I might want to access it remotely. And that's perfectly fine as well, because whenever you get a device and it's installed with Windows 10 IoT Core, then out of the box you get a remote management environment. You basically get a web portal. So I hit that device at port 8080. As you can see here, I'm on the IP address of the device, :8080. And I have this big management portal, and I have all these options, and I'm not even on the device. I'm just hitting it remotely. And I can, as you can see, see a list of all of the apps that are installed on this device. This is far easier than browsing to the right directory and listing the apps and knowing which ones are real apps and which ones are transient folders or whatever. And I can choose one of these apps and say, I want to start this.
Mm-hmm.
I want this app to go right now. Or I want to set this as the default app, so that the next time I reboot my Pi, I want this one to be the one that comes up. Or I can kill my app and tell it maybe it's not acting the way I want it to, and so I can shut it down and restart it, whatever I need. A lot of other management options over on the side here, and you get all this rich interaction with your device just right out of the box. So let's look at what we've looked at. We looked at universal apps as one of the distinguishing features of Windows 10 IoT Core on the device, the fact that it plays well with other devices. We looked at the hardware level security, the fact that you can recognize absolutely that this device is this device. It is who it says it is. Shouldn't say who, that implies a person, but it is what it says it is, and it's coming from where you as the developer expect. We looked at the fact that it will support Arduino sketches out of the box. It will recognize multiple devices. You can install this on a number of different IoT boards. And you have this really enjoyable bootstrapping experience where right out of the box, you can get going, you can do the simple thing, or you can do the complicated IoT application if that's what you're looking for.
Perfect.
You need to do.
I love it. That was a great overview of kind of the basics of Windows 10, where that fits into the space. I guess my only question is what the development experience looks like, and I have a feeling that's the next module.
Well, if you insist, that's what we'll talk about.
All right, we'll see you in the next module.